Hello, I'm Greg Levine, and this is the party line for September 16th, 2011. And many of you probably heard about an explosion on Monday at a nuclear reprocessing center in the south of France. Mercoul, France, I believe. It was an incinerator explosion. An incinerator was used for what they call low-level radioactive waste. It's the kind of things that just get contaminated in the day-to-day operating of a fuel reprocessing center. Gloves, coveralls, small machine parts, the kind of thing that amazingly you produce when you use this as an energy source, and you've got to do something with that waste. Incinerating it seems crazy to me, but maybe not as crazy, say, as the pay-for-play plan that Governor Rick Perry in Texas has proposed, which is that a friend of his dig a 20-acre ditch and they just take 35 states worth of this low-level nuclear waste, radioactive waste, and store it really close to, precious aquifers that supply drinking water for the South. Maybe incinerating is a better idea, but it does again raise one of those, those kind of points about this idea that nuclear is a good way to generate electricity. It's just so many dangers upon dangers, so many extra little steps, other things that you have to consider besides just the getting of the fuel and the turning that fuel into a form that we can use to light a light bulb. But anyway, there was an explosion there. The reports say no radioactive material was released. The plant itself, however, is one of these reprocessing centers that turns previously used uranium fuel rods into something they call mixed oxide or MOX fuel, which is a sort of happy blend of uranium and plutonium that is then used again in fuel rods and nuclear reactors. More dangerous, believe it or not, than the straight uranium fuel rods. And in fact, it is some of this MOX fuel that was in the some of the reactors, at least, in Fukushima, Japan, that caused the fallout from the explosions there to be even more dangerous than it would have been otherwise. But I go off on this little digression here because it's important to realize that when we talk about nuclear energy being renewable, this is part of the process that they're calling renewable. The idea that you can, through an incredibly elaborate and dangerous process, take some of the spent fuel and turn it into an even more dangerous fuel that will, again, at the end, still be dangerous. And of course, the initial fuel had to be mined, and in the end you still have a waste product that eventually you can't use but do need to find a way to store. So, ergo, not really renewable energy right here. But you know what? This is all like a giant aside, because while this story was taking up all the air, there actually was a more important nuclear story that happened this very same week, which is that the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, got together for its annual meeting in Vienna, and it's the first major meeting since the earthquake and tsunami in Japan and the ongoing nuclear crisis. Faced with this crisis, the head of the IAEA actually suggested that they learn some lessons, that they come up with a program to enhance nuclear safety, to provide for international inspections, to have a one-year deadline to come up with new rules for enhanced safety to deal with natural disasters, and that within 18 months all the world's nuclear reactors be stress tested against this new set of guidelines and submit to mandatory inspections from the International Atomic Energy Agency. And this plan was backed not only by the director, but by countries like Canada and Germany, nuclear powers. Australia also uses nuclear generation, and then a lot of non-nuclear countries, of course, also concerned, since they tend to be a bit downwind or downstream from some of these nuclear countries, all endorsing this set of guidelines to at least put some measure of international oversight and safety in wake of the Japanese crisis. That's not what passed. What passed, of course, was a non-mandatory, no rules, no guidelines, no timelines, no deadlines, kind of, we should all make our nuclear facilities safer, kind of, we can all agree on that, can't we, proposal that will allow for international inspections, but only if the member states request them specifically. So there will be nothing mandatory, there will be nothing imposed from above. How come, with such important countries in favor of inviting the IAEA in. How come? Well, how come is because of China. How come is because of Russia and Pakistan and India and for some reason Argentina, but of course also with all of those countries, how come is because of the United States. The United States was a primary actor in watering down the IAEA draft to the point where it is essentially nothing more than a feel-good rah-rah statement. Much, of course, to the disappointment of countries like Germany and other members of the International Atomic Energy Agency. The United States, hell-bent on making sure that no lessons are learned from the Japanese disaster, it seems. And look at the company we keep here. Pakistan, India, China, Russia. Really? This is the group of world leaders we want to be associated with? This is the kind of forward thinking that we want to be part of? This is progress? This is winning the future? Really? It's interesting because, I mean, this to me was the big story of the week, and it came out in a week where first of all, there was a very interesting story, which I linked to in the post, about how the United States decline is sort of tied to the diminishing supplies of petroleum across the world, and our attempts to sort of hold on to dependable supply of petroleum has caused all kinds of repercussions throughout our economy and our world influence and stuff like that. But it also comes in light of this non-scandal, the Solyndra bankruptcy, where a small green energy company receives a series of loans, and of course actually there's a whole lot more to say about this and how the loans started under the Bush administration, and how even if this company fails, as it has gone bankrupt, you've trained 1,100 workers in skills that can be applied in other parts of the green energy economy, and you now have this built factory, and that there's all kinds of right-wing money tied up in this, much more than government money. Lots of things to say about the scandal, about why it's not really like the scandal that Fox News and it seems now like the rest of the establishment media want to make it. But the thing is that the real scandal here is that we can be distracted by this small failing in a startup green energy business where we've invested, frankly, a tiny amount of money, while we continue to just hold steadfast onto dangerous, non-renewable, old-fashioned energy. And that we spend 10, 20, 30 times as much money, no, more. I mean, we're talking billions in loan guarantees, billions in subsidies, not to mention the amount of money we expend to defend the countries, to occupy the countries where we would get these old fuels. And I'm not just talking about petroleum, I'm talking about uranium mining too, because as I've pointed out before, our domestic uranium resources are pretty much tapped, and we have to rely on countries like Russia for uranium now. And, other fine places around the world, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan. So the real scandal is that while we can get all bad investment, green technology, and that's going to be like a big story, the real story here is that the United States is working behind the scenes to make sure that we continue to support these expensive and dangerous and non-renewable and backward-looking energy sources, and that's the party line for this week. And I'll see you next week.